bringing you in-depth discussion from one of the rad groups of online writers covering the Edmonton Oilers. Are you ready for Oilers Overtime? Join us as we talk news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and more. All featured on one of the most glorified teams in the NHL. From the great one to the next one. From the boys on the bus to the decade of darkness. This is Oilers Overtime.
Hey now, everyone. Welcome to our 40th episode of Oilers Overtime. If you're a regular listener and you guys are wondering who this guy is talking, this is Julian Mangilo. I'm a regular on the show, but I'm taking the hosting reins for this one tonight because Jim Parsons, our regular host, is on the injured reserve. So I don't know if maybe he's just a little bit upset with the Oilers play as of late and still trying to get over that, or if he's actually sick, but we hope he gets back soon. But we're going to battle through the injuries like the Oilers have on their blue line. So with that, let's go to the people who are here, and we have our regular contributors as usual. We have Colton Panku here. How's it going, Colton?
I'm good, Julian. How are you?
I'm doing good. And Brian Swain here is with us as well. How's it going, Brian?
Hey, what's good? I didn't know this was our 40th episode. So
I know
Jim's Iron Man streak ends just before the 40th.
Tough. I know. What a tough loss. But you know what? We're going to carry on and carry on here and keep going. So a lot to discuss. We're a little late with this episode just because people were feeling under the weather. We had to reconvene. But let's start with some older news in the Kris Russell breaking the shot blocking record in the NHL. It's a big accomplishment for him. And let's start with Colton. I'll start with you. What do you think about his shot blocking record, him breaking it? And do you think he stays in the lineup moving forward here?
I think once everyone gets back healthy, he's kind of an in and out guy again. But I think he's a guy during his time in Edmonton, I know, has taken a lot of flack just from the analytics community. And he obviously has some limitations in his game, but he's a guy for me that he's not my favorite player by any means, but just have a ton of respect for it. Because like you said, those shot blocks, it's almost kind of comical at times how he just seems to get beat up every game, limping off the ice almost every shift, but it's right back out there. It's crazy. And I think it says just a lot about him. And he does mean more to this team, I think, especially in years past than people have given him credit for. So it's pretty cool to see him get that record.
Yeah, that's true. We've seen his role grow too as the players have gotten injured, right? And the last game it was a little bit lower than usual, which I was kind of surprised with, to be honest. And then prior to that, it spiked up really high. We've seen Tippett use him in big scenarios and a lot of ice time. Brian, what do you think about the record? Because I know you wrote an article on that, him breaking the record. And should he stay in the lineup when everybody's healthy?
Yeah, well, I thought I kind of echo Colton's sentiments there. I thought it was pretty cool to see him break the record because he has been given a bit of a rough ride from the fan base, whether it's the analytics community or people just don't see him as a guy that's maybe worthy of being in the lineup. And of course, before this year, he had a contract that probably paid him a little bit more than the weight he was pulling. So, but he's a guy you can't help but respect. I think he's just a Class A dude. And Dave Tippett had a great quote after he broke the record. He said, you blocked 10 shots and 4 of them, I think it was, I can't remember what the ratio was, but 6 of them kind of hurt. And then 4 of them just really, really sting. And he's out there doing this every night. So that says a lot. As to what he means for the lineup moving forward, when everybody gets healthy, you probably I think he's the ideal 7th defenseman to have kicking around right now. I don't think he's a guy you want in the lineup every night on a team that's going to contend for the Stanley Cup, which is what the Oilers' aspirations are. He had another tough game on Tuesday night. I thought he really struggled, how a lot of the teams struggled against Minnesota, but he had a tough one. And I think as we see some of these younger guys emerge too, he's just going to fall further down the depth chart.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough way to make a living. And he's crafted his game really well from being a puck mover, offensive defenseman in junior to now a shot blocking specialist and a guy who takes a lot of pain and takes his lumps through the games. I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you guys. I think that when he's healthy, when everybody's healthy, I should say, I think he should stay in the lineup. I think what he brings defensively, especially with a younger group, and especially if he's playing with an offensive guy like Barrie, I think the value that he brings is much more than guys like Slater Cuckoo or any of the rookies that we might see just because of the experience level. So going into a playoff series, his shot blocking ability is something that nobody else on the team does. And they've been missing that from Lagesson big time.
Yeah.
And Bouchard has picked up some of that slack for sure. He's a pretty good defensive shot blocker as well, but nobody who's gonna, just lay it on the line like Russell does. And I think that depth and that he brings is more of a calming, stable presence that they are lacking on the blue line right now. So I think that he should kind of stay in the lineup more often than he was even prior.
Let me ask you this, Julian, when everybody is healthy, and that's, there's a long way to go before we got to get CC back, Keith back, Nurses back, of course, but Slater Cuckoo. But when everybody is healthy, if that ever happens on this team, who are your top six?
So I think the Nurse Bouchard pair is pretty much solidified. And then I would go back to the Keith CC. And then at that point, it becomes, to me, it's Barrie and Russell, because the other guy that you could throw in there on that third pair would be Cuckoo, right? That we've seen Cuckoo there mostly through this season. And I just think that, Cuckoo has, I think, blocked 12 shots in 11 games, and Russell has like 35 in this 12 game span as well. So, I mean, the value that he brings to me is just something a little bit more than what we've seen from Cuckoo, even though, Cuckoo's had that role for most of the season. What do you guys think about the top six when everybody's healthy?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say quick, I think with Cuckoo back, I do think sometimes, especially now, like he obviously has a ton of miles on him. So I kind of wonder too, if giving Russell a night off every now and again and switching him in and out with Cuckoo is kind of using either one to say as your 6-7, if that doesn't benefit Russell a bit, just because he does, like I said, he has a ton of miles on him. He's banged up pretty well all the time. So I do wonder if rest here and now does help him. But I do agree with you that I don't see Cuckoo as a huge, if any, upgrade over him.
Yeah. Brian, what about you? Where do you stand with the six defensemen when everybody's back?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to make a bit of a controversial statement here. I am falling in love with Niemeläinen. I don't know. I mean, I understand there's a lot of compelling reasons that say he should be sent back down to Bakersfield. Probably a lot more that makes sense than saying keep him up. But he also brings something to this team that I don't think anybody else does, that we really haven't seen on this team in years. Like the way this dude throws the body, like I heard some things about, like there was kind of a legend developing about him down in Bakersfield, but now that I've had a chance to see it, he brings an element that nothing else has on this team. And I think he's going to be a big piece moving forward. Maybe I'm rushing things a little bit, but I don't know. What do you guys think about him?
I'll let Colton take that one if you want.
I mean, honestly, I haven't really noticed a ton in the just because he hasn't played a lot yet. But I mean, I think the fact that I haven't noticed any egregious mistakes or anything like that, which I think already says a lot. So just to get his first few games in here and the fact that he hasn't looked out of place, I think says a lot. I didn't really know much about him at all. I kind of had heard about him this year in training camp and everything, that he was a guy that could potentially get call-outs from injuries, and now here we are. So I'd still like to get a bit more of a look at him, I guess, before I'd be ready to say that I'd like to see him permanently. But I think so far he hasn't done anything that's been bad, at least to my eye.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I don't think his time here is going to last too much longer in terms of being up with the team. He hasn't, wowed me or kind of, made me hate him. But that's because of the limited sample size as well. So I don't want to judge him too harshly so early into the career, right? So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the Kings game where McDavid was ejected for boarding Adrian Kempe. I think it was in the second period. He kind of came in on a little bit of flyby for anybody who didn't see it, and kind of got the back shoulder of Kempe and kind of plastered him into the boards. And Kempe left the ice. He was bleeding, I believe. And McDavid was assessed a game misconduct in a 5-minute major. So Brian, we'll start with you again on this one. Do you think that the ejection was warranted, and should have there been a suspension for that hit?
It's tough. Probably not. If maybe it's a really tough call. I don't think number one, there shouldn't have been a suspension warranted in the moment with the ref calling a 5-minute major and then 10 minutes misconduct. I can maybe kind of see the justification for that, but it was not a smart play by McDavid. Let's call it what it is, right? I think it was a bit of a frustration point for him in the game. Put his team in a difficult situation because whether we think it should have been 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 2 minutes, I think we can all agree it was a penalty. And it was not a good time to take it, and it was a play that didn't need to be made. So that's not something that's of his character normally. Like I said, I think he was just frustrated. I don't think he probably deserved 5 minutes of it, but I think the conversation coming out of that, I think a lot of people were frustrated in the sense that you see all these calls go, or what should be calls not get called when McDavid is getting mugged out there, and then he gets this. But I think that kind of shifted the conversation away from the fact that the reason the Oilers lost that game wasn't because of the McDavid took that penalty, right? It was what they did in the 55 minutes before he played, or before he got the penalty, that ultimately was the reason they lost.
Yeah, that's where I was kind of going with it. McDavid's getting dinged up for these misconducts, and he's usually the victim of all these penalties. Colton, what did you think of the hit?
Yeah, like Brian said, I didn't really have a problem with the call. I don't think it was a great hit. I think it was a bit of a tough position too. I think Kempe kind of maybe turned on him a bit last second. That being said, I think that's a penalty every time. And I agree with what Brian said too, in terms of like, it did make the score look a lot uglier. I think they ended up getting 3 on it, but it didn't seem like a game, even though they were only down 1 at the time, that they really had any business being in or coming back in. I think they kind of looked flat all night, as they have a bit lately. So I think it was the right call to not give him any extra discipline, but I thought the 5-minute major was a fine call. I didn't really take any issue with it.
Yeah, I think it was, I would have been even okay with the 2 for the boarding, just because it seemed more of like a flyby and a quick reaction to him kind of hunting the puck down, and someone being closer to the boards caught him in an awkward spot, and then he turned. And I agree with you guys about the suspension. I don't think it needed anything else, and I think that was enough. And I just think that we should, hopefully McDavid could get some more of these types of calls. He's getting victimized, like Brian had alluded to. And it'd be nice to see the same thing reciprocated on McDavid's end. Well, the Oilers are on a little bit of a slide, and we saw it in that game against the Kings. They lost 5-1. Let's go to the biggest concerns that we've kind of seen in the last 3 games and the 3-game losing streak that they've been on right now. Brian, what stuck out for you in these last 3 games?
Well, we could go to the obvious that they're not starting. They're starting out of the gate so poorly, but that's been a problem that's been going on for a long time. It's just now they haven't been able to score themselves out of these situations, right? Like they have in the past. Draisaitl's got, I think, 1 goal in the last 5 games, or it's either 0 or 1 goals he's got in the last 5 games. His incredible pace of scoring 82 goals has kind of tailed off a little bit. And I think we see what happens, like when McDavid and Draisaitl aren't delivering 2 to 3 points every night, this team still has his troubles. And that we've talked a lot about how we thought there was added depth to this team this year, and I still kind of believe there is, but it's really been pretty badly apparent here these last few games that when the big 2 aren't carrying the load. You get a goal from Puriarvi, sure, but that's just not going to be enough, especially against teams very good, against teams as good as Minnesota. So that would be what really jumps out for me. And but beyond that, it's the much larger trend that has been going on for well over a month now, of this team just getting off to such terrible starts. And I thought they would have learned their lesson after the LA game. I really thought that was it. Tippett was maybe as most pointed as I've heard him in a long time in being critical of his team after the game. And then they come out and they give up the first goal 71 seconds of the game last night. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think they've trailed in. I think you hit this in one of your articles. They've trailed 1-0 in 15 games out of the 24 they've played this season. So there seems like they're just always playing catch up. And
Yeah,
we've talked about this prior and how they, have this aura about them that they can come back from anything, and, the swagger that they have when they're playing. And it's almost like they're getting too comfortable, and they think that they can just score their way out of games. And it seems like the depth scoring, when the big boys score, the depth scoring is also scoring at the same time. So it's not offset, right? So when no one's scoring, they really feel it because their defense is very depleted right now. Colton, what did you see in those 3 games that kind of stuck out to you as major concerns?
Yeah, again, I think it's, like Brian said, a longer trend than just these 3 games. I think we're kind of seeing again, like when McDavid and Draisaitl don't have these superhero efforts every single night, which they can't be expected to, then there's not a lot else. I think there's certain guys that have been a little off lately. Like Nugent Hopkins is a guy I think they really need to start getting more goals from. I think we talked about the assists a lot, and I think a lot of that did come from power play productivity. I think even strength, they need him along with the rest of the team to be a lot better. I think it is apparent too. You're seeing now that the blue line injuries are really starting to creep up. I know they got Nurse back. That hurts too. But I think just the starts to games, and again, like Brian said, I think the depth scoring is something that I thought was going to be a lot better this season with the additions of Hyman and everything. And I do think it is slightly, but again, I think when you are able to shut down Draisaitl and McDavid, which once the playoffs roll around could happen, there's not a lot else right now. So I don't know if there's maybe a trade at the deadline that adds to that, or if they're able to just figure things out. And I do think for the season, I'm not worried about that. But once the playoffs come around, I think there is still a concern about just overall scoring with this team.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this one out to you two guys here, because we have, like I say, we talked a lot about the depth of this team and we praised it this year. Now that we're seeing how things are when things kind of go a little bit sideways for a week or two, can we sit here today and say that this team is much deeper than it was last year? Because that's like, we're starting to see those moments. This is what has prevented the Oilers from getting to that next level, right? And as good as they were for the first 5, 6, 7 weeks, now we're seeing this. So is this just a blip, or is this team very much still what they were the year before and the year before that?
If I'm answering that right now, I think that they are creeping into that area where they're becoming what they were. That we're unmasking what they actually are. Nothing much changed with the top 6 except adding Hyman, really. So, and how much better is Foegele than anything they've had, because everything else is basically the same. Derek Ryan's now playing the 4th line, right? So, there's definitely a move to be made there. And I think you can get away with the way they're playing and what they have currently to get them into the playoffs. But there's definitely a move that needs to be made near or coming close to the deadline, where they have to pick up a top 6 forward that's going to play your 3rd line. Right now they have 3rd liners playing 3rd line, right? They need a top 6 guy, like all these guys are acquiring at the deadline, to play that 3rd line, because you need that scoring upside. Whether that's a guy like, I don't even know. I haven't even looked at anybody, but these teams add these big names that played lower in their lineup or slot in higher to push guys down, which we haven't really seen. It's always been these minor moves. Colton, what do you think?
Yeah, I think their forward group, because of the addition of Hyman, is slightly better, but I don't really think the blue line's any better. If anything, like you said earlier with Lagesson, I think it's slightly worse, and the goaltending didn't change. And I think Smith was lights out last year. So if anything, that's a bit worse too. So I don't know. It's disappointing, because we were talking like before, or at the end of last season, how they had all this cap space, and to Holland's credit, he did make changes. I'm just not sure if they're changes yet at this point to get them over the hump. But who knows? Like you said, they are in a bit of a lull right now. So in 2 weeks, they could be right back on top, and we'll be singing their praises again. It's just kind of how it goes. So like you said, I do think playoffs are still, I'm not worried about that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't love what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, it's easy to be critical when they're on a 3-game skid, and when they're playing high and mighty, and we're all singing their praise, like you said. I just think even too, like the defensive play, like I don't know what's going on with, they've used Niemeläinen a lot, even with these guys. They got Nurse back now, and Niemeläinen still stayed up, and Now Lagesson has been kind of brushed to the curb a little bit, and we've seen Alan Walsh has put his what should I say, voiced his opinions and concerns on his social media like he usually does, and sticking up for his client in Lagesson and how he's been treated. What do you guys think? Should he be in the lineup? To me, it looks like from these last little games here, Niemeläinen has been okay, but I think you can see that there's some sort of disconnect with him being in the NHL from the AHL. To me, it's always there's a lot of defensive errors that are going on and leading to these goals where there's a lot of defensive breakdowns. It seems like people don't know where they're supposed to be in their own end and who they should be covering. A lot of open plays. And I think Lagesson would help that because of the experience he has, and especially last year, he's played a bunch more games than Niemeläinen, which I was kind of surprised that Lagesson was out of the lineup. What do you guys think of that whole situation?
I know for me personally, I didn't really pay much mind when Lagesson was out of the lineup, just because I think at this point he's probably at best going to be a 6th, 7th moving forward for them. I don't even really see him as that. But I do think he'll probably get back in the lineup, assuming guys don't get healthy, just with how these last couple of games have went. I think you always kind of change your lineup when things aren't going great. So I wouldn't be surprised to get him back in. And as far as Walsh's comments go, it's just kind of like you said, he's not shy about sharing his opinion. I think everyone kind of still remembers that Fleury thing from a few years ago. And I'm not too concerned about that, but I do think Lagesson will get back in next game.
Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, as much as I love Niemeläinen, I would agree with your take on Lagesson. I think he could maybe bring something a little bit more that they need right now. With the Walsh comments, I think I kind of suspect what happened was that when Lagesson didn't stick with the team out of camp and got put on waivers, I think they were hoping, client and agent were hoping, that somebody else would scoop him up and he would go to a place where he would ostensibly get a more opportunity to play. Now, I don't know. I think wherever he goes, most teams on this league, he's your borderline 6th, 7th, first pairing guy in the AHL defenseman, right? But I think that's what they want to do. And I kind of suspect that they might have been trying to maybe force his way out of town again. I think that might be part of the motivation behind that, stir it up a little bit. But no, I think he can still. I haven't minded what I've seen from him in his limited minutes this year. I think we know who he is at this point. But yeah, I do hope he draws back in, actually, because I think he maybe hasn't gotten the opportunities that he does deserve.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's go back to the bottom 6 forward group and this concern that we have here. We got a couple reinforcements back. They got Devin Shore returned back to his role in the 4th line. And we saw a little bit of a new look kind of line. And they also waived Brendan Perlini. I actually just wrote an article projecting lineups when people come back. And of course, after that article was published, Perlini got waived. So I had him on the 4th line and that didn't work out. So what do you guys think about Shore's role and having Perlini sent down? And do you think he should have stayed up here and been given more of an opportunity? We'll start with Colton.
I was really hesitant on him in the preseason, kind of just what we had seen with Ty Ratty years ago. And I think that's kind of proven to be true. I know he didn't get a ton of opportunity, or mainly playing on the 4th line, but he did get a couple of reps with McDavid and still wasn't able to do much. So I'm not surprised. I think for the 4th line, I like a player like Shore a lot more. He's a lot more of a high energy guy. He's physical, just a lot more versatile. He can take faceoffs, kill penalties. So I like that. And I think as far as the bottom 6 goes overall, you're not getting much from it all right now. Like Cassian, again, has just kind of went back to his old inconsistent ways. And then Warren Fogle, who I was really a big fan of through the first 10 games, hasn't really done anything at all since. So I think that's a big reason why they're struggling right now, is that bottom 6. I know that Kyle Turris, your guy, just can't seem to get in the lineup lately either. So I don't know if maybe that's another change that's going to come here soon as they continue to lose these games. But yeah, I don't know. The bottom 6 is just really lacking right now.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised how they managed the roster in general, just because McLeod is waiver exempt. So I thought they might try and retain one of the guys and maybe send McLeod down, because he really hasn't given you anything to, gaga over really. So I think he only has 3 goals on the season. Don't get me wrong. It's good for him for experience, and he's not going to hurt you. He's not going to make it break your team, but the experience is good, and he's probably part of the future. So you'd like to see him in the lineup, but just because of the roster management, I would have liked to maybe see opportunities given a little bit elsewhere, and give him more minutes in the minors. Brian, what do you think about Shore's role and the bottom 6 in general?
Yeah, I got to give credit to Cole on this one, because he brought up the Ty Ratty comparison when I think, like, especially me, but I think Jim was on this train too. We were pumping up Perlini for, like, yeah, he could score 20 goals, etc., etc. And man, that just did not happen at all. Colton, you called it. You compared him to Ty Ratty. It's been a tough go now. Like, he never really played more than 6, 7, 8 minutes in any game. Yeah. So he hasn't gotten much. And that's when he has played, right? What's he played? 13 games out of the 20.
Yeah, I believe so.
So not much opportunity. But he just hasn't brought anything. Like, it's clear that this is his kind of MO, that if he's not scoring, it's not within his game to have other ways that he can contribute. At least not what we've seen. But again, limited sample size. So that was a tough one, but I do like Shore. I think Shore's absence has actually become really apparent here in the last 2 games. I think he's going to be an injection of some what they need, and so I think that's a big addition to the lineup. It's just moving pieces in and out. I would give Turris another spin around the sun at this point in time.
Don't have to tell me twice. Put him in there.
Yeah, I think he's been okay again in limited time this year, but I don't know.
It seems like they're still missing a piece really that needs to kind of take over that bottom 6.
You said it perfectly. I think they need a top 6 guy on the third line.
In your third line. Yeah. I think that kind of sums it up. I like Ryan, what he's brought. He hasn't been great in terms of his plus minus rating. But the face-offs he brings is something I like. I thought he would kind of maybe slot in a little bit higher with McLeod going down. That didn't happen, obviously. But I think they need something on the third line, maybe some depth at center on the third line too, just to kind of round out their team heading into the playoffs. Okay, well, let's put the bad behind us, all the negative behind us, and let's look ahead to the rest of the games on the homestand here. So they have 4 games remaining on the homestand here, and they have a little bit of a tough ride here, tough road ahead. It's not going to be easy. They got the Bruins, the Hurricanes, Columbus, and of course my hometown Maple Leafs here. So what do you guys predict? We'll start with Colton. What's your prediction for the rest of the homestand, and how do they come out maybe next game against the Bruins?
I think just because you could kind of feel like the negative headlines and everything like that starting to get ready these last 2 games. And then after that last one, they've really been hearing it now. So I think they'll come out good against the Bruins. And then the Hurricanes are a team that lately has been struggling a bit with guys on the COVID list and everything. So as far as the homestand goes, the rest of it, maybe I'm being a little too optimistic, but I think they go 3-1, and I was going to have that loss be against the Leafs, but I do think that they'll be able to turn this around right away here.
Yeah, I think they can definitely bounce back. The Leafs, a lot of these teams are actually pretty banged up. So, I mean, it'll definitely be definitely a hard fought battle. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, I have no idea why I think this, but I think they're going 4-0. Like, everything tells me I'm just crazy. Like, if you look at their last few games, but I just think that I even if it's just McDavid and Draisaitl single-handedly or double single-handedly carrying the victory, like, I honestly expected against Minnesota, McDavid just to come out snarling and pump home like 4 or 5 goals, right? So I think they're gonna get it back together, but I think it's gonna start with those 2. I think there's gonna be a burr in their saddle, and they're going to take it out on these next four teams. But I think there's going to be some tough games. The one I'm excited for, that Leafs game. I think that is going to be I'll save it for my prediction, but I think it's going to be a good one.
Sure. So I agree with you guys. I think they're going to bounce back really good here. I think, it's 3 games, 3 big losses. So I think they're going to go 2-1-1. Definitely a win against the Jackets. And then I think the Leafs game will be a close one. I think there'll be something in overtime, or a shootout, something like that, because the Leafs are pretty banged up. And we'll see what happens with the Bruins and Hurricanes. I think the Bruins are in for a tough battle just because of how bad they played as of late. And I think it's just waiting for a blow-up game from Draisaitl McDavid here. So I'm going to predict a 2-1-1 record the rest of the way. I want to specifically focus on the Leaf game here. So Colton, we'll start with your prediction for that Leafs game, because they'll be playing on the Tuesday when we record. We usually record and they lose. We skipped yesterday. They still lost because they know we're supposed to record that day anyway.
They didn't get the memo that we took.
Yeah, they didn't get the memo. We might have to, our PR department might have to send an email or something out. But yeah, so next week they'll play on the 14th against the Leafs. What do you think is going to happen in that one, Colton?
Well, I thought my 3-1 was optimistic, and then Brian saying 4-0 is kind of got me thinking maybe I should change this Leafs prediction. But I already said that I think the Leafs will take that one, so I'll say it'll be a close one too. I'll say the Leafs take it 4-3.
Okay, Brian, what do you think?
So I was going to say, I'm with you. I'm actually, well, okay. If number one, I think it's going to be 4-3. I'm agreeing with you, Julian, that it's going to be in overtime. I think McDavid's going to score the winner in overtime. I think it's going to be back and forth, a great game. But I made this prediction before I considered the Tuesday factor. Now that the Tuesday factor's in the mix, I think everything's out the window, right?
Yeah.
I might have to completely reverse it. But no, I think it's going to be a good one. I think it's going to go to overtime. And I don't know if you guys remember, those two teams played a terrific overtime game here on a Saturday night. I think it was last January or February.
Yes.
McDavid.
That was a doozy. That was a doozy back and forth game. So I hope it's a high gun, a lot of offense game. Marner's probably going to be out for the Leafs, unfortunately. So it might be a little bit less of an offensive battle, but I think it will be a extra time kind of game, whether that's a shootout or overtime. I'm not sure, but I'm going to go with a 4-3 overtime win for the Leafs because I can't go against my team, even though we're recording this podcast for the Oilers. Other than that, I think that about wraps it up for this week. Is there anything else you guys needed to hit on?
We're all saying 4-3. So there you go, everybody. Go out there. Yeah. If the over-under is 6.5, place
your bets. Place your bets for sure. And be sure to check out all the other great shows we have on the Hockey Writer YouTube channel. Follow the social channels on Twitter and Facebook. And there's lots of great articles, great content from all of our contributors. And sign up for the Morning Skate newsletter to get news, notes, storylines right to your inbox. For Brian and Colton, I'm Julian. Get well soon, Jim. Hope to see you back next week off the shelf, and we'll check you later.